It's an incredible honour. Thank you both for joining me on stage for this symbolic moment during London Climate Action Week.
Royal sources hint at tensions between King Charles and Sadiq Khan. What sparked the disagreement? All right, something very interesting is brewing behind the palace walls. While most people were watching the usual headlines from Westminster debates to London's congestion zone row, a quiet story began to ripple through political circles. Word of a disagreement, not between rival MPs, not between cabinet ministers, but between King Charles and London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And according to royal watchers, this tension could reveal a lot more about how the monarchy sees its place in modern Britain, especially when politics hits too close to home. So, here's what kicked it all off. Over the past few weeks, London has been at the center of a heated debate over environmental policy, urban development, and the balance between climate goals and public frustration. At the center of it all? Sadiq Khan's signature environmental push, particularly the ULEZ expansion, the ultra-low emission zone. You've probably heard about it. Drivers across London now face extra charges for vehicles that don't meet emission standards. The goal: cleaner air, healthier citizens, and a greener capital. But not everyone's thrilled, and that includes some surprising voices from Britain's establishment circles. Royal correspondents are now saying that the king himself, a lifelong environmentalist, was caught in an awkward position over the controversy. Why awkward? Because King Charles has spent decades advocating for sustainability well before it became mainstream, yet he's also deeply aware of how divisive these issues can become when they hit the public's pocket. According to one senior royal insider reported in a Sunday newspaper, discussions inside the palace turned tense after Khan's team invited the monarch to speak at an upcoming green policy event in London. The idea, apparently, was to highlight how City Hall and the Crown share a vision for environmental leadership. But sources say the palace declined, and that's where things get interesting. It wasn't the invitation itself, it was the timing. Right now, Khan's environmental policies are facing fierce backlash from parts of the public, as well as from political opponents. Accepting that invitation could have dragged the king into the center of a live political firestorm. And that, for a monarch constitutionally bound to neutrality, is a red line. One palace source reportedly put it like this: His Majesty supports green initiatives but not political campaigns dressed as them. That's a pointed remark, and it's got everyone talking. Now, it's important to be clear here, there's no official feud between the king and the mayor. But insiders are hinting that this situation created visible frustration behind closed doors. Not anger, just concern. Because the monarchy, especially under King Charles, is walking a tightrope. He's passionate about the environment, that's no secret. He's spoken about climate change at international summits, even before becoming king. But as monarch, he has to tread carefully to avoid appearing to endorse or criticize elected officials. And yet, when those same officials like Khan use environmental language so close to the king's own causes, the lines blur. That's where the reported tension really lies. Not personal animosity. Not politics versus monarchy. But identity: who gets to speak for Britain's green agenda? Sadiq Khan has been positioning himself as a global climate advocate, hosting international mayors, speaking at UN events, and promoting London as a model for sustainable urban living. It's a legacy project, one that could shape his reputation far beyond City Hall. But that ambition runs close to the king's own image, the monarch who's been dubbed the original eco-royal. So when two public figures, both passionate about the same issue, operate on different timelines and under very different rules, friction is inevitable. Political analyst Zoe Williams explained it perfectly in an interview. The king can't wade into policy, but he can set tone and influence through symbolism. Sadiq Khan works through policy and politics. They're orbiting the same goal, but from opposite directions. That's what's really happening here, two visions for Britain's environmental leadership colliding in subtle, symbolic ways. Of course, once this story hit the media, reactions came flooding in. One royal commentator said, "This isn't anger, it's boundaries." The palace is drawing a line between moral leadership and political involvement. Meanwhile, supporters of Khan argued that he's simply pushing forward where government action has lagged. A viral post on X put it bluntly: if the king and the mayor disagree, it's because one is cautious and one's actually doing something. Another fired back: respect to His Majesty for staying above politics. We don't need the crown dragged into Twitter wars. It's that exact split between pragmatism and principle that makes this moment so fascinating. And here's what makes this even more delicate. The king's public image has been built on restoring stability after years of royal controversy. He's been careful, diplomatic, softly spoken, focusing on continuity rather than confrontation. So, any suggestion of tension, even symbolic, risks shaking that perception. That's why the palace moved quickly to cool the narrative. A spokesperson clarified, "The king's engagements are planned well in advance, and His Majesty remains committed to supporting environmental progress across Britain." Translation: no feud, just protocol. But still, that explanation didn't stop people from wondering what's really happening behind those palace doors. And let's be honest, the optics matter. When the monarch and the mayor of London seem even slightly out of sync, it sends ripples through both political and public spheres. Because whether you love or question the monarchy, King Charles represents something bigger, a symbol of unity above politics. And Sadiq Khan represents the politics of progress, the struggle of governing in real time, with all its messiness. Two powerful institutions. Two different worlds. And now, a quiet disagreement that speaks volumes about how modern Britain balances heritage with change. So where does this go from here? Will they find a way to align, perhaps through a carefully staged event that restores harmony between Crown and City Hall? Or will the palace stay quietly distant from London's environmental drama, letting Khan carry that torch on his own? One royal analyst summed it up perfectly. If there is tension, it's not personal, it's philosophical. It's about how Britain moves forward without crossing the invisible lines that keep its system in balance. And that's the real story here. Not anger, not scandal, but the silent negotiation of power between two of Britain's most influential figures. Because in a time when politics feels louder and more divided than ever, sometimes the most important conversations happen quietly behind gilded doors.